Today is Thursday, August 13th, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. A remarkable discovery in Jerusalem. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can always email us, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. Glad you're here with us, getting through the news of the day. We're here bright and early each and every weekday. With me today, CBN's Trey Goins-Phillips and Madison Seals. On the focus story, a court rules tech companies must face thousands of lawsuits over social media addiction.
Yeah, a federal appeals court in San Francisco rejected the company's bid to reverse a lower court's ruling. So now these tech companies must face more than 3,000 lawsuits about youth addiction to social media. So we'll get into the fallout from that today.
All right, looking forward to that in just a moment. Also on the main thing, archaeologists uncovered a 2,500-year-old face offering a rare glimpse into the people of the Bible's first temple era. All that's coming up and more, but first I want to tell you about our sponsor for this podcast today, Christian Solidarity International. As you know, 50 years of helping persecuted Christians in need, and they are there, boots on the ground. They're walking alongside people. It's just incredible, the networks they have of people and the connections they've made to keep relationships going for long term. And that's what you need in these situations. You can't just come in there cold and expect to get any traction and to really be able to help. But they're raising awareness on cases like the one in Pakistan we told you about, where a Christian girl was basically abducted from her family, from the job she had, a teenage girl, and then forced to convert to Islam. And the courts are siding with the abductors rather than the family. So cases like that, they are working to bring resolution to them, and they do it 24/7 all the time. So if you want to walk alongside those efforts and you're tired of seeing just the news and you feel like you can't do anything about it because they're way over there, you're over here, well, this is something you can do to tangibly help them, physically help them on the here and now on the ground. csi-usa.org/quickstart, csi-usa.org/quickstart. It's a great way to help, be the hands and feet of Jesus, to help persecuted Christians in need. csi-usa.org/quickstart. All right, going to the news in 90 seconds now. And a surprise Friday hearing is fueling some speculation that Luigi Mangione could be nearing a plea deal in a federal case against him. Federal prosecutors and Mangione's defense jointly asked a judge for a conference to happen on Friday morning, but their brief request did not say why. Several outlets reported the meeting is expected to involve discussions of a possible agreement. Of course, Mangione accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside a Manhattan hotel in December of 2024. He has pleaded not guilty. And a former Southern Poverty Law Center official has been arrested in a widening case involving $1.2 million allegedly funneled to white supremacist informants. Heidi Barrich, a former SPLC finance officer, was arrested Wednesday in California, with Attorney General Todd Blanche confirming an arrest in the case. Indictment alleges she established bank accounts and under fictitious company names to secretly route SPLC donor money to informants inside extremist groups. Prosecutors allege roughly $1.2 million ultimately went to an informant inside the white supremacist National Alliance. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can check out more stories like that over at cbnnews.com. Hey guys, this SPLC story is just, both of these stories are that we just went over. Mangione, if there is some sort of a plea deal, it's really kind of shocking. The execution of Brian Thompson's on tape. There's security cameras catching it, so this should relatively be an open and shut case. So I'd be surprised if there's some sort of a plea deal, but we'll keep an eye on that for Friday. But this SPLC officer, it's really just rich if it weren't so sad that this is what the SPLC was doing as they were accusing everyone else of being hate mongers. They're essentially paying people to infiltrate, be in these places, and then, who knows what they did after that. But it's really crazy that the SPLC could be at one time have been considered like these. They were quoted all the time in the media, all the time, as if they were sort of, and then they would just turn around and be like, Republicans are hate groups. Basically, I'm obviously exaggerating, but that's essentially what they would do. Any group that had a conservative leading or a Christian leading would just instantly be labeled a hate group. And so it was kind of comical, obviously a political hack organization, but they were treated by the media with kid gloves and like they were somehow the arbiters of who's hatred and who's full of hate and who's not. And so, man, just really interesting to see this judgment come down.
Yeah, it just kind of makes you think about these organizations that parade themselves around as we're an apolitical organization, or we're a bipartisan group. It just doesn't seem, unfortunately, like those things really exist, and the SPLC has just become like it was just another get rich quick scheme for a lot of these people. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. I guess it's encouraging to see that there has been some accountability. A lot of it, though, is kind of too little too late because the damage is already done. As you said, Dan, the media has paraded the SPLC around for years as kind of, this is the baseline. If they say that a group is evil and vindictive and racist and sexist and homophobic and bigoted, then it must be, take that letter to the bank because it's true, because they're a good, legitimate organization. And now we're come to find out, not so much.
Not so much.
So anyway, I hope that the people who have been defrauding, not just, financially, but have been defrauding culturally the American people for so many years, hopefully they're held to account for their actions.
Yeah, and of course, the irony of this whole case is that the SPLC was paying people to take part in the efforts that they supposedly are fighting against. So I hope that people who supported the SPLC look to them for years, as you were saying, Trey, for kind of the baseline of what is good versus wrong. I hope they take a second look at all those organizations that the SPLC supposedly opposes and what they actually stand for. And they might learn some things about what biblical principles actually are and what it means to stand for those, what it means to be conservative or a Republican, instead of just taking what the SPLC says.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see how this case plays out. We'll give you updates here in the coming days and weeks whenever they're made available. All right, we are going to go to the focus story now, and a number of tech companies now must face thousands of lawsuits over social media addiction. So why did, Madison, the U.S. Appeals Court, rule against the tech companies here?
Yeah, so it's the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals that ruled that tech companies like Meta and TikTok cannot use Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act to dismiss these thousands of lawsuits against them. And Section 230 was these tech companies' defense. It basically shields online companies from claims about content that's posted by their users. And it's part of an act from 1996, so it's been around for a few decades. And these companies were arguing that it also prevents lawsuits, claiming that they failed to warn people about the addictive nature of their platforms. But the court ruled that Section 230 offers only a defense against liability, not total immunity from being sued, which is what the companies were claiming.
What tech companies are involved in this?
Most people are familiar with the platforms, but not as familiar with the parent companies. So I'll mention just a few of those. The lawsuits are against Meta Platforms, Alphabet's Google, ByteDance's TikTok, Snap Inc.'s Snapchat, and several others. And Meta has really been the main company in the headlines about this. They argued that Section 230 provided it broad immunity and asked to postpone a trial in a lawsuit that was brought by 29 state attorneys general that alleged the company illegally collected and used children's data, designed their social media platforms to keep young users hooked, and misled consumers about their safety. So even though Meta's kind of at the forefront of all of this, going back and forth with the courts, there's quite a few companies that are mixed up in this.
And where are the lawsuits originating from?
The lawsuits have been coming from everywhere. So, states, cities, townships, school districts, and individuals too. And they allege that social media companies are intentionally addicting young users and also contributing to depression, anxiety, body image issues, and just the broader mental health crisis among American youth that we've talked about before on this podcast. So, they're asking for monetary compensation for damages, penalties on the companies, but ultimately they're asking that tech companies stop posting the addicting and damaging material. Most of the cases are really centralized before the U.S. District Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers in Oakland, California, but the companies are facing hundreds of additional lawsuits in state courts. And so far, the courts haven't decided in tech's favor. Meta and Google were found negligent by a jury in a March trial. Meta lost in the New Mexico state court. And just recently, they had to pay $567 million after being found a public nuisance. So it's not looking great for them. They've lost most of these cases in smaller courts, but we'll see what happens as this case progresses.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever seen a social network, which is, probably somewhat outdated now. I mean, I don't know how many years ago that was made. Technology's rapidly advancing, but the point remains the same about the algorithm, and it is absolutely their business model to keep you addicted to their platform. Look, we're publishers, we create content and we try to use all these different social media platforms to get our content out there so that people see them. But one thing, if you've ever tried to get a link out somewhere, is that these platforms, all of them pretty much, don't want people clicking on that link. They want you to, and why is that? It's not because, they hate CBN News or they hate Fox News or they hate CNN. They treat all of those links equally the same. They don't like any of them. Why? Because their main mission is to keep you on their site. So like Facebook, they don't want you to click on. That's why they are promoting video now, and you'll see all the reels, all the things that keep you on the page. So notice that anytime you're scrolling through anything, do they ever encourage you to, hey, check out this link on this website? No, basically never, because that would go against, that's bad in their world when people leave. When people leave there, that is bad. And how do you get them to stay? You have to make it as addictive as possible. So it absolutely should be looked at in that way. And it's definitely harder to quantify. It's not like cigarettes or something or alcohol where it's like, okay, this is addictive in nature. We can look at the physiological, issues that happen with that. It's a little easier to do than with anxiety or that sort of thing. But they're absolutely all connected. We're a pioneer generation, unfortunately, with tech. And we're the ones that are dealing with this. And these big media companies have been able to skip around the consequences with that 230 Act, or I forget what the exact name of it is, but the one you mentioned, Madison. So yeah, absolutely interesting that these lawsuits are coming, and we'll see how they play out.
It's funny you mentioned the social network, because they're coming out with a sequel to that, The Social Reckoning.
Really?
That is kind of revisiting some of the same issues that we're talking about now. I think it's coming this fall or maybe this Christmas. I can't remember when it's coming out. But anyway, I have a lot of thoughts on this because I don't want to absolve people of personal responsibility either and like pass the buck off to
Sure.
somebody else. Or if you're little kids, I don't want to absolve parents of responsibility of monitoring what is it that your kid is doing. Are you actually telling them to go play outside or play with their brothers and sisters, or are you just handing them a screen? So anyway, I think personal responsibility certainly factors in, but also I think that these tech companies have shown time and time again that they are not actually concerned about the moral and ethical issues that these things raise. They're concerned about the bottom line and making more money and keeping people on these apps. I mean, one really recent example that we're learning about even now is Instagram, which is a Meta product, saying, we acknowledge the mental health risks that particularly with young girls that come with using the app, and we want to create ways for people to not be addicted. But then at the same time, they recently roll out a new feature where if you pay $3.99 a month or whatever it is,
Right.
we'll let you track how many times all of these people are looking at your story and how long they're spending looking at your posts. So it's like, do you really care? If you really cared, I don't think you would make all of this information accessible to people, especially accessible to teenagers who are already dealing with a lot of issues that you have already admitted they're dealing with. So anyway, it's hard to take them as at their word as being authentically concerned. So I certainly understand the frustration, and I do think that they need to be held accountable for their actions, particularly when they're saying one thing and then doing something else. I don't know, it makes me think of Anthony Fauci.
Final thoughts, Madison?
Yeah, it does seem like a lot of the issues that people have with social media are just built into what social media is. It's there to keep you scrolling. And it's interesting, Dan, as you talk about how it's hard to find links, there's been quite a few times when I've seen a headline posted by some sort of news source that I'm not familiar with, and you click more to, find the link so you can read the actual story, and there's no link there. It's just like the headline just to get your attention.
Yeah.
And I guess to go to the comments to start interacting with people, but it's just really built into what these platforms are. There are youth safety measures that can be taken. That may be the only real way to, kind of help make these platforms a little bit safer for kids. But like you were talking about, Trey, it's really about personal responsibility, especially for parents. Anyone who hasn't seen Toy Story 5, great way to learn more about how you can take personal responsibility. Look at what your kids are watching. But if anything, hopefully that's what parents take from following these cases, is to be motivated to take their own safety measures seriously and monitor what their children are taking in.
Yeah, absolutely. Important stuff. And again, we're a pioneer generation, and that is a little bit terrifying because we don't know what the consequences are of all this social media stuff 10, 20 years down the road, because we're right in the midst of it. The first generation being raised up through this stuff. And we're unfortunately going to find out whatever side effects there are in the years to come, but definitely worth being vigilant about it as much as we can now. So definitely appreciate you bringing that one for a discussion on the podcast today, Madison. And we're going to head over to the main thing now. Archaeologists in Jerusalem are used to finding ancient stories and pottery, but this time they found a face, a 2,500-year-old figurine mold discovered near the Tower of David's, giving researchers a fascinating new window into life and possibly belief during the First Temple period. Well, CBN's Julie Stahl has more on that for today's main thing.
Discovered deep in the Tower of David Museum at the end of the Kishle, or prison, the mold dates back to the First Temple period.
Actually, it's very exciting because as an archaeologist, you are dealing with stones, you are dealing with the ceramic, and suddenly you see face. Suddenly you touch humanity. Suddenly you start to see belief, people, not just stones.
Archaeologist Dr. Amit Raem told CBN News the figurines are found in all Jerusalem excavations from the 7th and 8th century BC. They're seen as an enigma because while the bodies are made by hand, a mold was used for the faces.
Using mold, it means that the face was important. You could play with the body, you could make it by hand, shape it by hand, but the head must be very, very accurate.
They turned to Deborah Ben-Ami, curator of Iron Age and Persian period at the National Treasures of the Israel Antiquities Authority to see how it would have been made.
You have here the mold, pottery made, and then you see here the face inside. We used a plaster to recreate what the figurine looks like. So we put here the material, and then we have the modern impression of the face.
She showed us various pieces and a full female figurine found in an excavation at the Lachish site. While there are theories about how the figurines were used, no one knows for sure.
At the beginning of this research, they were start thinking that this is a main goddess, maybe Asherah, maybe Ashtoreth, then a lot of a fertility goddess, even a toy. Today, we are more in the way thinking about a blessing image, a kind of mediator.
Israel's Minister of Heritage, Rabbi Amichai Eliyahu, made this statement about the discovery. According to the sages, the first temple was destroyed because of three principal sins: idolatry, sexual immorality, and bloodshed. The discovery of a mold for producing figurines from the first temple period in the heart of Jerusalem offers us a tangible glimpse into the world in which the prophets of Israel lived and into the spiritual and cultural realities they confronted.
This is the Kishle. When they first started excavating here more than 25 years ago, they had no idea what kind of treasures they'd find from the second and even the first temple periods.
I wanted to build an education wing right here. But then the archaeologists came and said, listen, we are the first to check what's going on here before your plans, before everything, because this is ancient Jerusalem.
Kishle is a Turkish word from the Ottoman era, meaning winter shelter. When the excavation began there, a former British jail, built near Jaffa Gate in the 1930s, was on top of everything. Archaeologists dug through the period of the Crusaders, foundations of King Herod's first-century private palace, and back to the First Temple time. Now that they have reached bedrock, the excavation is winding down.
It contains all the layers and levels from the history of Jerusalem. It's like a microcosm of the history of the city.
Elat Lieber, director and chief curator of the Tower of David Jerusalem Museum, says they are moving ahead with the new Schulich Wing for Archaeology, Art, and Innovation. After the excavation, the antiquities will be displayed using artifacts, projection technology, and models to tell the story of those who made history in Jerusalem.
We want people to enter this beautiful, beautiful architecture, to be amazed by the building, but more than this, to discover the antiquities.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Tower of David Jerusalem Museum, Jerusalem's Old City.
All right, appreciate that. Very interesting stuff. If you want to check that report out, go to the CBN News YouTube channel. You can find that and see all the visuals there. All right, that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing.
We are looking at Ephesians 2:10 today. It says, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago."
Yeah, as we look at and talk about the youth mental health crisis, body image issues online, it's such an encouragement that we are God's masterpiece and to know that he has good things planned for us. Our lives are intentional and purposeful.
Amen. Good spot to leave it. Good thought to leave it on as we wrap up this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. As always, make sure you're getting on over to cbnnews.com and faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. We'll see you back here tomorrow.